Alright, so I've been sitting with this video for a few weeks now, ever since I finished Clair Obscur. You know how sometimes a character really sticks with you, like they just hit you in a way that you weren't expecting? Well, that's exactly what happened to me with Gustave, and thinking about the type of character he is, the type of man that he is, made me also think about Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima. And then from there, I got thinking about Wonder from Shadow of the Colossus. Now, you might be wondering what an engineer, a samurai, and a tragic monster hunter all have in common. Well, that's kind of what I'd like to talk about today. Each of these men demonstrate in their own way what happens when unconditional sacrifice out of love forces you to become someone you may have never thought you'd be. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's a bit terrifying. Similar to my Arthur Morgan video, this one is gonna be a little different. We're gonna go a bit deeper, and fair warning, there will definitely be spoilers for all three games. So if you haven't played through them and you wanna go in blind, maybe save this one for later. All right, let's dive in and kick things off with the man that sparked the idea for this whole video. For those who come after. 5 words that define Gustave's entire existence. 5 words that, by the end of Clair Obscur, feel like both a blessing and a curse. Now, I basically had 0 expectations going into this game, and I absolutely did not expect to meet a character like Gustave, but I just have to talk about him because his story is such a good representation of what it means to sacrifice everything you are for what others need you to become. Gustave isn't a character who just so happens to care about people. Being useful to others, serving others, caring for others is who Gustave is down to his very core. He's willing to give up his own dreams, his own future, his own safety to live up to that calling. To touch on his design for just a minute, it points you to exactly this idea. His design is intentional. His design is attractive. It pulls you in and it makes you want to know more about him and his world. His prosthetic arm is not some sleek sci-fi steampunk thing that just looks cool. It's heavy, clunky, mechanical, and clearly built from spare parts. It creates this immediate curiosity about who he is and why he does the things that he does. And his arm ties perfectly into his overcharge mechanic. He builds up power slowly, then releases everything he has when his team needs it the most. When he lost his arm, he literally designed part of himself to be more useful, even if it might not have been the most convenient solution. That's just who Gustave is. His clothes are practical and worn, even his face looks weathered, like someone who has spent years hunched over blueprints, building contraptions, doing everything they can to help and contribute to those around them, sacrificing comfort for purpose. But it goes deeper than just his tools or his techniques. Watch Gustave write in his journal throughout Act 1. Every entry, every innovation, every hard-earned lesson, it's all being documented for apprentices he may never see again. For people he may never meet, he's pouring his life's work into pages, not caring about recognition or credit so that others can benefit. He's building a legacy of knowledge that will outlive him and go on to impact generations to come. His studies, his inventions, and innovations, this is where Gustave's story really begins, way before any of the devastating events of the game. And what's interesting is that he has spent so many years preparing for those who come after as more of an abstract concept. Future generations, apprentices, the greater good. Willingly giving up personal relationships and individual dreams for this higher purpose. But he's never really considered what might happen when those who come after are suddenly right in front of him. What happens when they have a face, a laugh, a heartbeat you hear when you hug them? That's exactly what we get to see as the game begins. Enter Maëlle and Sophie, the people who make those who come after deeply personal for Gustave. Maëlle isn't his biological sister, but she might as well be. She's his living legacy, and as you play the game, you see that she's the embodiment of everything his philosophy actually means. And then there's Sophie. Sophie is the romantic love he found despite his devotion to duty. And when you go beyond the surface of their relationship, you find an even deeper layer of what she represents. Gustave is so future-focused, so wanting to build a better world for others, so sure that things can and will change that he has 0 reservations when it comes to having children. His mindset is so innately focused on building a better world for those around him and those who come after. Unfortunately, Sophie disagrees and they end their relationship. But their opposing views give us another window into just how much Gustave cares for others. It's almost like it's not even coming from decisions. It's just who he is at his core. He's a man who knows that his purpose is to serve. Both relationships show the same pattern: genuine, deep love, and a weight of responsibility for others that never leaves his shoulders. And you can see the tension this builds as the story begins, because up until this point, it seems like Gustave has mostly thought of those who come after as people he'd never meet. But with Maëlle and Sophie, that's beginning to change. They are right here, right now, and he would give up everything to protect them. Then everything in his world begins to crumble. The prologue ends with Sophie's death from the gommage, and I was just totally speechless at this point. I mean, that has to be one of the top 5 best game intros of all time. And the game, gosh, doesn't even give you or Gustave any time to process it. The mission continues. He throws himself into facing the paintress, doing everything he can to make Sophie's death mean something and to protect Maëlle. But then the mission goes catastrophically wrong. Most of his team dies, and Gustave wakes up in Spring Meadows, stumbling through a field of bodies. The man who has spent his entire life serving and sacrificing for others is surrounded by failure. And he has this moment where it seems like it was all for nothing, and everything just seems so meaningless. And I feel like this was such a relatable moment. I mean, we've all been there, right? Working so hard for something that suddenly feels like it was all for nothing. Like it all gets ripped away one way or another in an instant. For Gustave, he decides that there's no point in continuing. This great engineer, this man who has always had a solution, wants to give up. Because when everything you've sacrificed your life for proves inadequate to protect the people that you love the most, what's left? Thankfully, as her name might suggest, Lune finds him and pulls him out of the shadows. And in that moment of absolute despair, Gustave finds something to hold on to, seeking out Maëlle. When the circumstances demand that they move forward, he puts aside his feelings and makes the choice to let go of the mission and find his sister. Even though we know that he's deeply loyal to the mission, his love and care for others shines through. And once again, he shows us the level of sacrifice and service he's willing to go to for those close to him. This is just another way he puts "for those who come after" into action. Even when it's not about humanity in general, but about one specific person, he is ready and willing to give all of who he is. His final stand against Renoir was honestly devastating. He knows that he won't survive, but he does it anyway to give Maëlle and the group time to escape, sacrificing his future so she can have one. And when he dies protecting her, his prosthetic powers down for the last time. All that engineering, all that preparation, he spends his final moments on the person who mattered most. His core beliefs never changed, but Maëlle teaches him that those who come after aren't just concepts in a journal or unseen generations to come. They are the real people all around you, the family and loved ones that you'd sacrifice everything for. And as a side note here with Gustave's story, I just want to say that I really appreciated that the game didn't just replace him with one of the existing female characters. Even though I loved all of them and they were all unique and special in their own ways, I was honestly so happy to see Verso get introduced. We get yet another strong and complex male character to lead the story, something that has gotten so rare in some of our Western games, and he was just as dynamic, just as valuable to the story, and it felt like such a respectful way to handle the transition. But while Gustave's story is about discovering what your principles mean when they become personal, Jin Sakai's story is about what happens when your principles and your love for people are at war, and what you're willing to sacrifice when love wins. I won't lie, when Ghost of Tsushima was first announced, the weeb in me was reignited, and I went into the game expecting gorgeous Japanese landscapes and really cool katana fights. Yes, I did get both of those things and more, but what I did not expect was to watch someone sacrifice everything that made them who they were, one impossible choice at a time. Jin Sakai starts as the perfect samurai. Honor above all. Fight with dignity. Follow the code even when your enemies don't. These weren't simply rules to live by, they were his entire moral compass, the foundation of everything he had built his identity on. And who taught him all of this? His uncle, Lord Shimura. After Jin lost his parents, his uncle became everything to him. Father, teacher, the last family he had. So when Jin follows the samurai code, he's not just following tradition, he's honoring the man who saved him, raised him, and adopted him as his own. This dynamic is what makes the story and his character so impactful. What Jin goes through is so heartbreaking. The entire game, we witness this constant war inside him that completely rips him apart. When the Mongols invade invade and start massacring his people. Jin and the samurai fight honorably. Changing tactics isn't even a thought at first, but as he sees more and more that their traditions are not working, he's forced to start admitting that everything Lord Shimura taught him might be wrong, at least for the reality that he's currently facing. And that's such a difficult thing to face, especially when you're talking about the person who's essentially responsible for your entire life. For Jin, it means potentially sacrificing his relationship with the only family he has left. I remember the first time that I made Jin use poison. You can almost hear it in his voice, see the conflict on his face, because good men don't fight that way, right? At least that's what his uncle taught him. Jin doesn't start fighting dirty because he stops caring about honor. He does it because saving his home and his people become more important than following the traditions and rules. Every poison dart, every stealth attack, every tactic his uncle would hate, you can see it eating away at him inside because he knows that he's sacrificing pieces of who he thought he was. But through all of this transformation, through all of these choices that chip away at everything Lord Shimura taught him, Jin never stops loving his uncle. He's able to separate the person from the ideals and beliefs, and that's such a powerful thing. He's able to look past his uncle's way of life and still see him with love as a person, as a human, as his family. Lord Shimura isn't just a sum of what he might think or believe, he's Jin's flesh and blood, and Jin never loses sight of that throughout the entire game. But as he becomes someone that his father figure would consider wholly dishonorable, Jin resolves himself to sacrifice Lord Shimura's approval and respect for the greater good. Every choice to fight from the shadows doesn't feel like breaking tradition. It feels like betraying the person who raised him, sacrificing that sacred relationship for his people's survival. And every tactic that dishonors the code feels like a stab in the heart that has been loved by his uncle for years and years. The thing about Jin's transformation is that it's not about becoming evil or him losing his moral compass. It's about discovering that sometimes love demands that you sacrifice the very things that make you. His love for the people of Tsushima, his need to protect them, becomes more important than his relationship with the code, and eventually more important than his relationship with the man who taught him that code. He's willing to sacrifice his identity, his honor, his family bonds, everything that defined him, to save people who might never even know his name. As the game comes to a close, Jin saves Tsushima, but he becomes someone his uncle, his father, considers fundamentally immoral and shameful, someone who has been sentenced to death by the shogun. And when he finally faces Lord Shimura in that final duel, it's yet another moment that is just so devastating because there's no happy ending here for either of them. Lord Shimura genuinely believes to his core that duty trumps all, including his own family, and the love that he has for his nephew, and he forces Jin's hand, who has no choice but to defend himself. In the end, Jin sacrifices everything. His life as a samurai, his family, his place in the world, even his name. The game ends with him all alone, and that loneliness isn't just about being by himself. It's about the price that he paid for choosing his people over his principles, his love for them over his loyalty to duty. He gave up everything that made him who he was so that others could live free. And I can't really talk about Jin and Ghost of Tsushima without at least acknowledging the elephant in the room. I just don't understand. Why do we need to take an already established character from a very successful game and essentially replace them with a random girl boss protagonist that nobody knows or cares about? Why? Everyone loves Jin and would love to see more of him. So why are we replacing him? And then why are we replacing him with a woman in the Edo period of Japan? For me, Ghost of Yotei just looks like a reskinned version of the first game that has made the bold and brave decision to give us a female lead, instead of just continuing Jin's story and basically guaranteeing the success of the game. I don't know. But to get back on track, Jin's love led him to sacrifice his identity and ultimately showed that protecting others was what was most important. So what happens when love stops being about sacrifice for others and becomes about your inability to let go? That's where the tragedy of wonder comes in. I was definitely late to Shadow of the Colossus, okay? I actually didn't play it until the PS4 remake, but when I finally got to experience Wonder's story, it quickly became one of my favorite games of all time. From the first moments, everything feels off. The music, the atmosphere, how your horse moves through the empty world, it all gives this really eerie feeling that what you're about to experience might not be exactly what you're expecting. That maybe you might not be the traditional hero. Our protagonist Wonder either doesn't notice or doesn't care. Mono, his lifeless maiden, is gone, and bringing her back is all that matters. He's already decided that he'll do whatever it takes, that he's willing to sacrifice everything. It's interesting that the game never even tells us why Mono died. Some sort of cursed fate is all we get, and I think that's intentional because to Wonder, the details don't matter. She is dead, and he'll sacrifice anything to get her back. His morality, his humanity, his soul, if he needs to. Wander is just this young, completely broken man, and when you see him holding Mono's body in that opening scene, you can just see that he's not accepting reality. His love for her is so complete that he's willing to give up everything else. Everything that makes him human just for the chance to hold her again. That's when we meet Dorman, an ancient entity that tells him he can bring Mono back by killing the Colossi. Wander doesn't hesitate, and he agrees to sacrifice these ancient, peaceful beings without question. The game sets it all up perfectly, and we, as the players, want to help this grieving man bring back the woman that he loves. But here is what makes Wander's sacrifice so tragic. Everything he goes through, all the colossi he kills, it is such a one-sided experience that is clearly biased towards his views and goals. He doesn't know anything about these giants just existing in their own land, just that he has to go and kill them. It's not because he's cruel, it's almost like they're not even real to him. There's this weird separation or disconnect between Wander and the actions that he's taking, and the game frames it all so well with the atmosphere, the setting, the sound design. Mono is the only thing that is real to Wander. His grief has made him blind to everything else. These creatures could be beautiful, ancient, magnificent, but none of it really matters. They're not Mono, so they don't count. He is willing to sacrifice their lives, their beauty, their ancient peace, all for one person that he can't live without. The first Colossus is this massive, peaceful creature just existing in the empty world. It's beautiful, ancient, alone. When Wander climbs onto it and starts killing it, there's no hesitation, no recognition of what he's destroying. Just cold determination, because he's already decided that this creature's life is worth less than Mono's. With each kill, Wander physically transforms. He gets paler, sickly, his clothes become more tattered, his hair gets darker, horns start to grow. But the game never shows his reaction to any of these changes. Again, there is this thick separation and disconnection from everything. There's no mirror scenes, no horrified realizations. Either he doesn't notice what's happening to him or he doesn't care. It's just him and his mission, and his love for Mono has consumed everything. He is sacrificing his very humanity piece by piece, and none of it matters to him as long as she can return. The final Colossus is this massive lumbering giant that, to be honest, was actually pretty hard for me to beat. Wander chases it down, he climbs up its body while it tries to shake him off, and through it all, he never stops, never questions, never hesitates. He is willing to sacrifice this giant's life, just like all the others. And finally, when the game ends, we have to watch this awful scene of Wander being physically dragged away from Mono's body. The thing, the person, the love that he has been so focused on the entire time. He is ripped away from her and pulled into this vortex. Dorman, now released, keeps his promise. Mono lives. But Wander becomes some kind of infant creature, sacrificed and transformed beyond recognition. His refusal to let go cost him everything. His humanity, his horse aggro, and ultimately his ability to even be there for the person he sacrificed everything to bring back. He gave up his soul to save her and lost the ability to love her in return. I still don't really know how I feel about the ending of this game. These three characters definitely do not make an exhaustive list of sacrificial or impactful protagonists, but they have really stayed with me because they each show a very different side of sacrificial love. Gustave gave up his life for Maëlle because she represented everything he'd worked towards. His legacy made real. He sacrificed his future, his dreams, his safety, everything that he'd built, because protecting her mattered more than protecting himself. Jin abandoned his honor and lost his family because protecting his people mattered more than preserving his identity. He sacrificed everything that made him who he was, his name, his relationships, his place in the world, so others could be free. Wonder got what he wanted, but at the cost of everything that would have made it meaningful. He sacrificed his humanity, his morality, even his ability to be with Mono, all because he couldn't let go. These games work so well because you end up building genuine relationships with these characters who feel real, even in impossible worlds. And when you care that deeply, their sacrifices hit so much harder. That's why the loss of GOATstave and the lack of Jin in the sequel aren't things that you can just forget about. We need more characters like these three men. Please give us more characters like this. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here. And if you've played through these games, please let me know in the comments if these characters hit you just as hard or if there's another character who impacted you in a similar way. I would love to hear about it. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.